is here, you see. Emakhaya ugesi wethu week. ESKOM. It's not so weak. If you can, Sister, don't be advised, is the department, oh, Lebo, you hear who from the department and the ministry is here? I haven't received that list.
Briefing by the Deputy Minister of Public Enterprises. No, this is wrong. Sorry. They're putting the wrong one up.
Hello, Chair, the Minister and the Deputy Minister are both here, and
okay.
The list of ESKOM, I've just sent it to you, to the colleagues.
You can drop it on my WhatsApp, that's fine. All
Okay.
right, no, that's fine. I think we are good to go. I see the Minister. All right, Honorable colleague, I know it has been a marathon day. Some of you would have had caucuses this morning. And then we had the question session to the President, and now here we are. Having these matters of ESKOM. Unfortunately, due to the sitting, the platforms were not available, and so we have to meet at this hour. So we welcome you to this meeting with ESKOM to rather a report back from our meeting before the lockdown in March. For the purposes of giving us an update on the report adopted by the House last year on Medupi and Busili, amongst others. But of course, that report had recommendations, including issues around consequence management and so on, and a comprehensive report was due on the 31st of March in that regard. So other matters, of course, I'm sure that ESKOM, the chairperson is here, in the executives, they will be competent enough to actually deal with it, any questions that may arise. So I think we are good to go. And thanks, Lebo, I've received your list as of those present, and it's a full complement. The CEO, COO, CFO, and the GEs and the general managers and senior managers. So we've got a full complement from ESKOM. I've been requested by Parliamentary Communication Services that when members speak to please turn on their cameras so that they can be visible. I know that some of us are dealing with problems of darkness. Honorable Dex lost electricity as the meeting was about to start, and he is in load shedding, I suppose. We've got similar problems in Mamelodi, protests yesterday and protests today about people complaining about electricity. So I'm sure that at some point we'll be able to have that discussion as well. But primarily we are here for that report back. I do want to put it before ESKOM that either now at the end of the meeting, for the purposes of our records here, we would like an explanation on the 5 billion rands transaction, which has been a cause of much discussion. I know that the press release was out and you've explained it to the Standing Committee on Appropriations, but colleagues did want that matter also dealt with so that we can dispense with it here, because it calls into question the issue about controls, which we have always spoken about. So I think that what I will do, I will hand over to the Minister if he's got any remarks that he would want to make, and then the board will then begin a process of briefing us with the executives. So Stombi, please enter the apologies into the record so that we don't waste time with those. Right, Honorable Minister, can I hand over to you? Colleagues, welcome.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening to the honourable members, I don't have much to say, save that there is no load shedding at the moment, but the Chief Executive can elaborate on that. And this, no doubt this system is under strain, given the extraordinary cold snap that we've had in the recent days. The second, Chair, is that you have a 65-slide presentation on all of the issues that were raised by yourselves. And I imagine that the Chief Executive and his team will go through them. And you might want to abbreviate some of that if you wish to save time. Thirdly, the acting chair of the board is not well, so he's not with us. But there are one or two other members of the board that have joined us. So if you don't mind, I'll ask you to hand over to the chair, to the Chief Executive.
All right. No, that is fine. Can we then proceed in that fashion? I think we will have to discuss the issue of outages in general later on. But here, Honorable Dex will be able to follow. I'm sure his devices are charged, so he's got a sufficient battery. Let's see how far it goes. The presentations are quite extensive, and so I will request that we speak to the salient points. If there's an issue that colleagues want to raise, they will flag it to which slide, because we did receive it prior. But I think that ESKOM is also aware of the salient points, which whilst everything is important, but we'll focus on the important. All right, so CEO, over to you.
I just needed to record that I'm actually around, Minister. I'm listening, and I concur with what the chairman of SCOPA said and what you have said. I think we should hand over to the CEO and his team, I think, to bring us up to speed on the matter that we discussed extensively previously. And hopefully we have provided you with the answer that you require. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Chairperson, thanks a lot, Prof. I would direct the CEO over to you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairman, Honourable Members. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight and provide you with an update on where we are. Like many other businesses in South Africa, we have not been unaffected by COVID-19, so we have seen a reduction in demand, particularly during the initial stages. Demand has subsequently recovered and at the moment is higher than is normal for this time of year. And as the Minister has said, that is due to the extraordinary cold weather that we are experiencing at the moment. It's the coldest that it's been in 10 years, and we are very grateful to our generation colleagues that we have not been experiencing load shedding. Some good work done there, and in particular the shorter maintenance that was done during the lower demand caused by the lockdown. Chair, with your permission, I would like to move quite quickly through the 65 slides. It is a lot of information, and I'm sure that the honourable members would have perused the presentation and made comments. So with your permission, I would like to forge ahead and move through the presentation as quickly as we can.
No, that's fine. Oh, let's do that. Yeah.
Right. Chair, if I can then move, do you wish me to share my screen, or do you want us to?
Please share it for the purposes of us following, because you said you will be picking the salient points, so it will be easier if you put the slide where you.
Unfortunately, Chair, I'm a guest, and only meeting organisers and presenters can share. Right, so I'm prevented from sharing by the platform. So I'll just mention the slide numbers.
I've just made him an attendee, so he should be able.
All right.
Okay.
All right. There we go. CEO.
Yeah. My promotion hasn't come through yet.
Yeah, your promotion will only be limited to putting up the slides. Don't mute anyone. And All right, no, that's fine. Let's get that presentation up.
There's nothing I can do. Highly winner.
Can you?
No, Chair, it's not allowing me to share,
No,
unfortunately.
it's fine. You can just put IT.
I'll never let you.
Chair, sorry, if I can request that we put up the PowerPoint presentation, which is a summary of the written submission.
Yeah, I think that's what I was hoping you'd do. Colleagues, can I request that you mute yourselves? I know it's in the evenings and the little one. Colleagues and people on the platform, please, can you mute your mic if you're not speaking? All right, guys, let's not be chaotic. IT, please mute everybody. IT, please mute everyone. All right, please put up the slide presentation and not the written submission. Right, CEO, I think so long you can proceed. Members do have their own presentations. You will just guide which slide you are on and we'll proceed for the purposes of saving time.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. On slide 5, item 6.1, we have identified contracts management as a particular weakness. So we have capacitated the management office. We have recruited more than 150 people on a fixed term contract basis. So these are not permanent additions to the ESKOM headcount, and we are taking monthly reviews to ensure that we track the delivery dates. So I think we are on track with this particular item. If we can move on to slide 6, the employment of qualified and skilled employees at Medupi and Kusile. We have been assessing both teams on site. We have obtained approval from the board. Slide 6, Chair.
It's not moving on it's stuck on slide 1 as far as I can see.
Yes, Honourable Kachalia, unfortunately I cannot share my presentation because I'm a guest. So
can Honourable Kachalia please be sent the presentation via email, and he can follow so long whilst we sort out this glitch?
All right, so on slide 6, we have assessed both Medupi and Kusile teams. We were very grateful to receive permission from the board to appoint staff, and we've made these appointments, and that process is expected to be completed by the middle of this calendar year. So we, I think, are doing well on recruiting those skilled personnel. The document management system, we now comply at both sites with ESKOM Procedure 32.6. We also have implemented a document tracking system at Medupi and Kusile, and we are comfortable that we've now got a much better handle on our documents and how we handle them. Moving on to slide 8. The employment of skilled personnel in the supply chain management unit. We have placed a moratorium on external recruitment, so this is only done by exception when there are key and critical vacancies. This unfortunately affects some of the resourcing of the supply chain management team with skilled personnel, but we are doing a skills audit in order to ensure that we can properly capacitate in each of the three divisions, supply chain management and procurement, as well as for those procurement activities that will take place at an ESKOM holdings level in accordance with the operating model that we have adopted. The vetting program has continued. We have identified all those senior managers that we have that we believe are at risk, and that is now taking place. The request by SCOPA for the vetting of board members, we have ascertained that this is not the responsibility of ESKOM per se. This is the responsibility of the shareholder, and in particular of DPE, and that has taken place prior to the appointments of all of the respective board members. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has also impacted some of the operations of the State Security Agency Security Clearance Assessment Board, and as a consequence, some of these vetting processes have been going more slowly than we had anticipated prior to the lockdown commencing. Chair, moving on then to slide 10, there is a table of all of the vetting that has taken place for EXCO members, and we provide an update there. With your permission, I won't go through all of the detail, but we have either completed or initiated, or we are awaiting the implementation by the SSA of the vetting program. So this is all in hand, and it's in the hands of the SSA to assist us in that process. The declarations of interest, which is now compulsory. Let me see, Chair. I see that the permission to share has now come through. Maybe I can do that. If you would give me 1 second, please. Apologies, Chair. Sorry for the logistical difficulties here. I trust that you can now see the presentation.
Not yet.
It sometimes takes a minute or two before it comes through, but while we wait for it to come through, let me... Pardon me, Chair?
You can proceed so long. That's
Thank
fine.
you. So we have, at 31st of March, we had achieved 98% submission of declaration of interest. The declaration of interest is done electronically, and because of access by people working remotely, our compliance rates thus far are lower than prior year, and this is solely attributable to the fact that we are stuck with network access issues during lockdown. But for the EXCO, as well as for the extended EXCO, we are up to date with 100% of all of the interests being declared in full, and that also applies to the ESKOM board. Moving on to slide 12, Chair, the internal investigations. We have completed most of our fraud and corruption prevention activities. A risk register is updated. We are working with training programs, and we are carrying on with an anti-fraud corruption campaign, and we are making sure that we maintain a consistent standard throughout this big organization of ours. We have a challenge with continuing new incidents being reported. On the one hand, that is reassuring because it means that our employees are our eyes and our ears on the ground when it comes to reporting irregularities. And we have referred quite a high percentage to a preliminary investigation and to ensure that we can close these out as quickly as possible. As at the 31st of May of this year, we had registered a total of 622 new cases, and we have completed 480 investigations. The 113 completed investigation relate to the old cases carried forward into FY17 and 18. And in total, therefore, we had 255 cases in various stages of progress under investigation. So still quite a big workload on our internal investigation teams. Chair, on slide 14, there is a summary of our caseload that we've got. I won't go into all of the detail on this, except if there are questions on this. I'm going to move forward to the lifestyle audits. We have rolled out all of our lifestyle audits across ESKOM. We have made progress across all of our senior staff. Some of the staff members have been identified as warranting further investigations inter alia by the SIU, and we have 7 of those still under investigation. 6 of the employees resigned in the face of investigations by the SIU. We are at the moment collaborating with the Department of Public Enterprises to carry out risk identification using data such as bank accounts, tax returns, asset registers, and so forth, to identify high-risk audits. It is not affordable for us to do full lifestyle audits of all the remaining 38,132 employees. Depending on which service provider you use, these can cost up to 32,000 Rand per employee, and therefore we have adopted a more cost-effective approach to identify high-risk individuals where we are of the opinion that they will then warrant more diligent scrutiny. When it comes to the financial losses, an update, Chair, on Trillion management. We are recovering 600 million Rand from Trillion, the erstwhile BBBEE partner of McKinsey, and those liquidation proceedings are underway, and we have been joined by SARS in this matter. So I suspect SARS will claim its pound of flesh before we get our turn. As far as Tegeta, Chair, and in your opening remarks, you made reference to the confusion which regrettably has arisen on the matter of the 5 billion Rand. The 5 billion Rand is a reference to a claim that ESKOM submitted against the business rescue practitioners of Tegeta, and this is for various contractual penalties that we have applied. We are regrettably aware of the fact that Tegeta has other creditors, and we therefore have been informed that it is unlikely that we will be able to reclaim the full 5 billion Rand from Tegeta, and we are likely to recover only an amount of 1.24 billion Rand from the business rescue practitioners as we go through the process of winding up the business of Tegeta. So, Chair, this is the 5 billion Rand that I refer to in my submission to SCOA. I think there was confusion here between the 5 billion Rand and the 4 billion Rand, and we can clarify the matter of the 4 billion Rand when it comes to questions. Moving on to Deloitte Consulting, we launched court proceedings against Deloitte to recover 207 million. To expedite the matter, we entered into a settlement agreement and we received a sum of 171 million Rand from Deloitte on the 12th of May 2020. A similar claim has been issued against PricewaterhouseCoopers for an amount of 95 million rand, which in our opinion was unlawfully paid to PwC. If it had not been for the lockdown, we would already have issued court papers, but we did write this letter of demand, and we are in the process of trying to progress this matter given the constraints imposed by the lockdown. There was an irregular contract that was awarded to ABB. We are working very closely with the Special Investigating Unit to set aside this contract and also recover some of the monies that, in our view, again, was unlawfully paid to ABB that we wish to recover. We constructed, as part of the Kusile power station project, a housing project at Wilfa, and as a consequence of negligence by a general manager facility, we suffered financial losses of some 76 million rands, and we dismissed the employee, and we have instructed attorneys to recover the amount of 76 million rand from this former employee. As far as Miagra was concerned, in collusion with a former ESKOM employee, this company submitted fraudulent invoices. We have recouped 3 million of the 35 million already, and we are pursuing the balance of the 32 million. In this instance, we're very grateful that the criminal justice system is functioning well and is assisting us, because the owner of Miagra and the former ESKOM employee are jointly facing 53 counts of fraud before the court in Johannesburg. Africa-wide Consulting, they were awarded the contract without an open and competitive tender process, and we are recovering an amount of 17 million rand that was unlawfully paid. The case of Impulse International, Impulse was awarded contracts of some billions of rands by ESKOM. There was a conflict of interest that was not properly disclosed. We have instructed attorneys to set aside these unlawful contracts and to recover the full value of the contracts from Impulse. And in this instance, we are receiving the support of the SIU, SARS, and DPCI to assist us in this matter. So this is an ongoing investigation. Chair, moving then on to consequence management. We have registered 141 cases. There are still 102 cases outstanding, so we have dealt with 31 cases since our previous report that we issued, but regrettably there are still 92 employee disciplinary actions that are outstanding. So while we've whittled down the long outstanding disciplinary actions, this is an area where we need to give more focus and attention to in order to accelerate these processes. Slide 22, Chair, contains a summary of where these particular issues are found, and you can see that the majority of them are found in our generation business, where we have a particularly large number of also long outstanding cases that need urgent attention to resolve. We have been taken to task by the Audit and Risk Committee of the board, who have requested us to train our disciplinary chairpersons and case presenters to also make sure that we close out our cases in the appropriate timeframes, and also to ensure that we don't mete out inappropriately light punishments for these transgressions, and that we also don't merely suspend people with pay so as to remove any incentive for those that are implicated, who then are able to enjoy some free time at the expense of ESKOM while their case is being investigated. We have revisited our stance to terminate investigations when employees have resigned. So we are following through on these cases. So resignation is no longer a way out for these employees, which used to be the case. And we are now following through on those former employees when it's justified and when we think we can get money back or assist in criminal prosecution. The internal audit, we have struggled with the moratorium on new recruitment, and we have since, in consultation with our group executive for HR, lifted that in order to recruit internally for managerial vacancies. Many of the audit and forensic positions are, however, non-managerial, and therefore the process has been delayed by the lockdown. But we are advertising the vacant post for Senior Manager Forensic Investigation, which is a senior position, and there are 14 further positions that we intend to fill in the near future. Chair, we have at the end of May recommended 76 instances for criminal prosecution, the details of which are contained in the written submission. 59 have been registered, 15 are in the process of being registered. We have had 4 cases being completed, and 13 cases have been referred to either the Hawks or the SIU. We have stepped up our controls to ensure that there is proper control over payment to suppliers, and the process flow is much improved. And we have reviewed all of our historical contracts. We have called on advance payment guarantees, and that was encashed on the 25th of April 2020 in order to recover the advance payment. And this should actually have been recovered during the execution of the contract, but we were still able to make use of that opportunity. This is just a diagrammatical representation of the process flow, which we have linked to our SAP ERP system so that it's automated, and that, as far as we can assure, is not capable of being bypassed, and the so-called 3-way matching takes place in order to ensure that we can protect our interests. The Fidic contractual payment process flow, that's also depicted there. Previously, this was an area where some abuse took place, particularly at Kusile, and with the appointment of a new project director at the Kusile site, we are far more comfortable that there is much improved control over the payment process, and that we are no longer subject to abuse of this process. The management of expiring contracts, we are monitoring these contracts closely, and we submit them to National Treasury for approval. We measure our plans, we have an early warning system in place, and we try and eliminate any poor planning that might lead to unnecessary modification or expansion of these contracts. And National Treasury exercises a very strong watchdog role in order to ensure that we stick to the rules when it comes to procurement of these contracts. If I can then move on to the update on the Medupi and Kusile defects. At this stage, I would like to request the COO to take over this part of the presentation. To save time, Mr. Oberholzer, I can drive the presentation, and you can just tell me when you want me to switch to the next slide, please. With your permission, of course, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. Good evening, Chairman. Yeah, anytime. Let's just go to slide number 30. We have this latent defects on both Medupi as well as Kusile. So what we have then done is, together with Hitachi, we have set up a steering committee, and we are sitting every about 6 weeks to 7 weeks. And the focus of the steering committee is to make sure that all these defects are adequately addressed and successfully addressed. So we've then designed two processes, the one being to make sure that the focus is in fixing the latent defects, and then the second process in parallel is then to deal commercially with all the challenges. Let's go to slide number 31, please, Chief. What we have seen, and I can deal now with the Medupi Unit 3, it's actually later in the presentation, but let me deal with it now. Yeah, on the 26th of January, we took Medupi Unit 3 off for 75 days, where we then implemented all these design modifications. So the unit came back towards the end of April, and on the 5th and 6th of May, we successfully achieved maximum generating capacity of 793 megawatts, and then sending out 729 megawatts. So we believe that we have moved quite a long and a positive way to have adequately and successfully, we don't know yet if it is 100%, but we believe that we have moved positively forward in dealing and addressing with these defects. So because we were quite optimistic, and what we have seen in terms of the improvement, we then decided to take unit number 6, which at the time was on an outage in May, and do the same modifications. Now I can say this morning, Medupi Unit 6 was successfully returned to the system. We now in the process of ramping up. When I looked about half an hour ago, we were standing on just under 350 megawatts, so we will slowly ramp it up. So we believe we will get very close to maximum generating capacity. As we also then speak, unit number 1 is the last unit that is not yet in commercial operation. Now this unit, we've decided to also implement the design modification, so that is happening currently. End of July, we're expecting this unit to come back. However, we made a decision today that unit number 4, by the middle of July, will be taken off, and we will then implement the design modifications on unit number 4 as well. And then towards the end of the year, the last 2 units, we will do the same modifications on there. Now, after unit 3 is returned, it's going to take us between 3 to 4 months now to really assess the success rate. But at this point in time, it's proving to be extremely positive. Chief, I think that is dealing with item number 614. I see 615 is, I can perhaps deal with 615 as well, if it's okay. It's holding contractors responsible for cost-related defects. Now, I can assure that we have the necessary processes in place. Currently, we have identified 4 major contracts specifically at Kusile, where we're working together with the SIU, where we believe we have made significant overpayments. The process, the schematic that the Chief showed a few slides ago, so that has been implemented to make sure that whatever invoice has been submitted, that we really make 100% sure that that work has actually taken place before we process that invoice. So, but we, on the 4 contracts, major contractors, are in the process to see, and together with the SIU, on how we can recover. So that is a 4 billion that's been mentioned. We are still maintaining that we believe it may be up to about 4 billion. So we are dealing with all 4 of these contracts together with the SIU. Earlier, the Chief mentioned ABB. Now, I'm personally involved in those meetings together with the SIU and ABB. We are close to billion. They are at 250 million. So they have admitted the fact that there has been overpayments. So we are dealing with each and every one of these contracts to make sure that whatever we've paid that was not due, that it will come back. So if we then move on to slide number 33, Chief, I think that one is on the coal quality management. I don't know if you want to take that one or you want to ask Dan, Mashigu to take that one. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. If we can ask Dan Mashigu, if he's on the call, to please take us through the coal quality management.
Right, no, that's fine, CEO. Just delegate as you deem fit until you reach the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. Dan, if you're on the call, sorry, I can't see from being the presenter whether you're on the call.
I am. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, honorable members and everybody around. Unfortunately, the screen is not sharing. I'm on slide 33, and basically the information on slide 33 is what we've shared, I think, in Cape Town in February. It basically talks about, the controls we've got in each every contract. We've got a coal quality management, a program, regardless of whether the coal is delivered by rail, road, or conveyor. So this is basically to ensure that the whole value chain has process controls to sample the coal, determine the quality, and implement, a contractual remedies, where there are deviations, and also to determine, the payment of the coal. We do analysis using ESKOM owned laboratories where we got tight collieries, and also third-party laboratories, where we delivering coal by road and rail. And mines also have their laboratories, so we also do a random check, between the three type of laboratories to ensure consistency and verify, the standards, and all the laboratories have to comply, to the applicable standards and ISO standards before we can, grant them, access to sample and analyze our coal. We also, where we have tight collieries, we put, automechanical samplers, which take samples at regular intervals, and that sample is representative of the consignment. I'm going to move on to slide 34, which is a continuation. The difference between tight collieries, where coal comes by conveyor, and there's an automechanical sampler, and the sample gets shared between, the mine and the power station. After analysis, the results are compared, and then contractual, procedures applied. Where coal is delivered by road and rail, coal is pre-certified before it can be dispatched. And one can understand, especially on road, that we have multiple suppliers, multiple, trucks. They arrive at different points, the coal stockyards, and these coal stockyards mainly were meant for one mode of transportation, which was conveyor. So hence for practicality reasons, we decided on a pre-certification before dispatch, so that you can manage the risk, at the colliery, and you don't have to deal with the coal when it arrives at the power station. And similar to the tight collieries, the coal quality management program is used basically, to do that. And the sample is also taken through an automechanical sample, and the sample gets, transported to an ESKOM contracted laboratory. So the control is with ESKOM, and the analysis, the stockpile will then be certified. Either red means the coal has failed, green means the coal is meeting the contractual spec and can be loaded and delivered, to the power station. And to illustrate what I just said, we've added a slide 35, which shows the process value chain when the coal, is being sampled from the colliery via conveyor. It shows basically, where the mass meter is, the sampling, the measuring point, which is now the contractual measuring point. Measuring point 2 is where we do verification, to ensure that measuring point 1, is accurate. And below that, you have now coal that gets delivered, by road, and similarly, as I've explained. So I will not go through the entire picture, but it's a graphic illustration of what we've covered, or what I've covered under, slide 33 and 34, and similarly, for rail. And slide 36, Chair, if I move on, is also a graphic illustration of what the pre-certification process, entails, from when the stockpile is created at the mine, sampling process, how they load out, the transportation, the offloading at site, and then the verification at the power station to reconcile back to what has been pre-certified at source check. We thought it will make it maybe easier to follow, with the pictures. We also, Chair, if I move on to slide number 37, as part of our, a process to improve on coal quality processes, we unfortunately do have elements in the process, with unwanted behavior, and we do, with our ANF, look at other means to try and root out, that behavior where we see. But other things that we've done, Chair, to go quickly through them, is to protect the cargo when it's en route. We've installed, a tamper-proof seals or tags, which are disposable. They are coded when the coal leaves the mine, verified when it arrives at the power station. It's the same tag is in place. Should a truck arrive without a tag, get sent back, to the mine. So we've got monitors at both the power stations and the mines to verify the processes that are explained above. And when there's deviations, Chair, the coal supply gets suspended, immediately. For example, the tamper-proof tag or seal, is not in place. We return the truck, plus we suspend the entire supply. It doesn't matter whether it's 1 out of 100 trucks. It is basically to ensure that the supplier can come back, and give us guarantee that the processes will be complied to and so on. And trucks are being tracked, Chair, and we've already touched on doing verification when coal arrives at the power station. In the pipeline, Chair, it's a process to automate, the entire, value chain. We call it pit to boiler, where coal can be traced from a quantity, quality, in transit, and it will be visible for us to control, manage until, it goes into the boiler. And this includes measurements, sampling, to ensure that we minimize the human interface, in the process, whereby we can eradicate error, malfeasance, and other, mischievous activities. The process, the project has been approved. We also have an approved contract strategy. We have been unfortunate due to COVID to go out to the market. And as soon as, we have all our tender processes, like the tender office and so forth open, we will carry on with the procurement process. And the next project is basically where we would like to move away from pre-certification and have a rig at the power station where you analyze coal before you even weigh at the weigh bridge, and to determine whether a truck, they should proceed or should be sent back, to the power station. It's the same process that gets used, for example, at the export terminals and Richards Bay, for example. And that project is already in the procurement process. The tenders have been issued, and we had to extend because of the COVID lockdown to after July to ensure that we can have the tender process alive, and when the things get to almost normal, we can proceed with the next steps to close off that particular project. And similarly, we've identified that we would like to take full control, including coal analysis. That means we have to capacitate, the ESKOM laboratory capacity on coal quality management. And that's one of the projects. The inland coal terminal, or what we call a marshalling, terminal, is a project that is going to be executed between ESKOM and Transnet. There are other, parties that have been brought into the fold. And yeah, Transnet is taking the lead in the project, and we'll update as it moves on. I am going to stop there. That's what we've got on coal quality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. The use of the retention bonds, if I can again ask our Chief Operating Officer to take us through the retention bonds.
Thank you, Andre. Thanks, Chief. I can confirm that we're using Fidic, the standard form of contract, for the majority of the contracts at Medupi and Kusile. And these contracts provide for adequate, make sure that you have adequate retention money, and that your releases are against, performance, and that you sign off on performance, and only then do you release as and when the contract dictates. Then we also have adequate defects notification periods, so to make sure that you don't pay any of your monies during the period of fixing the defects. So we have adequate processes in place. Then we also have the necessary retention bonds, and just for the sake of interest, that for the boiler contracts, that is Mitsubishi at Medupi and Kusile, we're currently having retention bonds to the value of 3.3 billion rand. If we then move over to retention money, that we deduct from each and every payment, and usually that you only hand back to the contractor upon successful completion of that specific contract. Stability, I'll deal with this one as well. That's item 618, stability of the project managers at Kusile Power Station. We have appointed a project director by the name of Abin Maharaj. He's actually also connected tonight. He's got vast experience, and specifically in the project environment. He used to be involved in the Grootvlei return to service, the Ingula, pump storage. He was managing that as well, and then he was at Kusile as well before he resigned ESKOM's service for a few years. So he's back. So he's successfully now in the chair and managing Kusile Power Station. I actually spent the whole morning, from 7 this morning till about just after 1 o'clock at Kusile, and I must admit that what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing is for me positive. So I'd like to welcome Abin. He's in the seat now. He was actually saying to me today he was longer in lockdown than he was actually on site before the lockdown. So I believe that we have now the necessary person to fill the chair. Then item 619, again, this is back to coal. Dan, if you can take over 619, please.
My apologies, Chair, I forgot to unmute.
No problem.
Okay. Chair, this is basically trying to enhance the coal flow at Kusile. It's the installation of the additional way bridges and also enhancing the offloading, facilities. The construction phase on the offloading, that is basically the way bridges, is going to be done in five phases. I think 2 of the phases have been completed already. The 3rd phase is under, execution, and with no disruption, I think we should be able to, or Group Capital should be able to complete around, June 2020. The coal hoppers and the access road, Chair, the inquiry will be issued to the market towards the end of this month, and I think this is also due to impacts of stopping the processes due to COVID lockdown. And we expect that the award of the contract will be around October, this year, and the conclusion of the construction activity will be around 2022. That is to do both the, the civil structures around the hopper and the roads. And Chair, I think I've also, other than the COVID delay, there was also upfront delays, in clarifying matters on the approach, which emanated from a process with National Treasury. And moving on, Chair, The 4 additional weight bridges, which will increase the tonnage payload, like per hour significantly to match basically the maximum burn at Kusile, are also expected to be completed by December this year. The work has to be stopped. I think the installation resumed this week, and we're hoping to conclude, as I mentioned, in December, whereas previously we had planned to complete the exercise in August. Yeah, we unfortunately had to stop all the activities. The additional conveyor, to supplement what is currently happening. We also expecting to do the completion by August, and all these projects here were projects that were underway. Unfortunately,
1 second, just a request that if you can turn on your camera.
Oh my.
Yes, right. You can proceed.
So I've covered slide 42. Then, with regards to the development of the New Largo, coal field, the project is now being approached two-pronged. There is the main mine that is now the mine that will deliver at steady state about 12 million tons, per annum. Siriti, who's the lead negotiator on behalf of New Largo Coal Mine, they've gone through a process to review the business case, which was developed by the previous owner, Anglo, and they expected to complete by end of May and revert back to ESKOM to share, the impact of the business case, so that the negotiation to conclude the long-term contract, can start in earnest. So we're still waiting for them, basically, Chair, to respond back to us. And as I mentioned, the mine would supply a steady state, 12 million tons because of limitations in the reserve. The balance of what Kusile needs to produce at maximum capacity, which is 16, will be sourced through, the open tender process that we started with the Kusile RFP. This is where I said they've decided to do the project two-prong. So there's a main mine, but they've also decided to start mining some of the, peripheral pits to the resource and to accelerate, the project. So they've identified 2 pits called pits D and H. They combined have a capacity of 30 million tons in total, and they will be designed to supply the tempo of about 3 to 3.6 million tons, per annum. So we have advanced, Chair, and I think all the contractual modalities and terms have been agreed to, bar the commencement date, which we are still, engaging to finalize, and then we can sort out when the offtake, it will happen. For information is that these 2 pits are also close to, Kendal, which is the next alternative, should we experience supply problems at Kusile, so it can solve, for the 2 stations. That's basically what we're trying to say. And Chair, as I mentioned, that New Largo was also, requested to develop a business case to build a conveyor. This conveyor is meant to basically handle all the coal and stop any trucking into Kusile. So there will be a loading pad, somewhere in the mine, and there will be a conveyor. All 30 party coal will be delivered on that conveyor, and then you don't have to have the long-term basis trucks going to Kusile as per original design. Yeah. I think I've given feedback on the additional feed conveyor, at the mine. That is all the short-term projects. So all those short-term issues, Chair, I have covered, Chair. Okay, and basic slide number 45. My apologies, I didn't mention which slide I'm on. Slide 45, Chair, is just a chronological, account of where we are with the negotiations. As I've given feedback, I think it's just to make it easy for reference. And if I move on to slide number 46, where we talk about the take or pay, and this was mainly, dealing with Medupi take or pay. I think we've gone through the principles of where, a take or pay is applied in Cape Town in February. but it's a performance guarantee, like a measure, and it applies across, both, the supplier and ESKOM. And I think as an example, the 5 billion rand that the GCE referred to earlier on, those penalties are basically failure to supply penalties in optimum. So you can see that for a period of about, I think, 18 months. So it does apply, also when the supplier is unable, to supply. In this case, due to the delays on ESKOM side, the penalties were unfortunately, on our side. And it's mainly because of this huge investment on both, the mine and the power station to establish, the infrastructure. Medupi at steady state, should be able to take about 16 million tons. So you can imagine the capital that went in at the mine, and also what we put up as ESKOM on our side, and to protect that performance. That's basically where the take or pay penalties. So that's basically what slide 46, is trying to cover. And here, it is a performance guarantee, as I mentioned. And in Wheatbank or around Wheatbank, where we also have similar contracts, is that we've been able to mitigate, the impacts of under offtake, from a power station which maybe experienced a problem by moving coal around. And unfortunately, between Medupi and Matimba, they fully contracted. We are moving some of Medupi coal to Matimba, which has helped, mitigate, the quantum of the take or pay. But by virtue of them being far outside, the Mpumalanga concentrations of the power stations, we didn't have that latitude, that ordinarily the power stations in Wheatbank could have. Okay, I'm not gonna go. I think slide number 48 is basically expanding, on how we ended up, with the take or pay at Medupi, which is common knowledge. It was as a result of, the supply from the mine having to wait for the construction and the commissioning, of the first unit, and also affected by the slow ramp up and the slow take up, due to inability to reach, a maximum, offtake. To mitigate, we then, as ESKOM, decided to build an extra, a stockpile to take on the excess coal, which we can later use on. And our intention is basically now to move this coal to close some of the gap in Mpumalanga. Then we don't have to pay, the take or pay penalty. One of the questions on slide 49, which was asked, is what is the take or pay penalty that ESKOM has paid since inception, of the contract? And that's what we are giving, Chair, and it goes on for individual, a financial year. So up to date, it is about 9.2 billion rand take or pay penalties we had to pay. Okay, Chair, as I mentioned, that coal that is sitting on the excess stockpile, there is a plan to evacuate it to Mpumalanga and create more space. And that project is underway. Unfortunately, we don't have a rail siding in ESKOM. It's something that we're looking at with Transnet to build a very rudimentary, a rail siding where we can load the excess coal, and also it will provide a flexibility opportunity should we run into problems at both Matimba and Medupi, that we can evacuate the coal, to, it's mainly Kendal and Kusile in Mpumalanga who are compatible to use this coal. Then we mitigate, the need for take or pay, penalties in future. So we had unfortunately have to use Exaro infrastructure, and they prioritized, I think, the coal supply during COVID and stopped all projects. So we have a slight delay, but we will resume, soon with the project, the actual execution. The discussion are happening. It's just the actual execution of the project that has been delayed because only people critical to the coal production are prioritized to be at site, and not the the project people. Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think my coal slide stops at slide 50. I don't know whether Avin through UGC will take on from slide 51. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. So we propose that Jan will take us through slide 51 on the production of gypsum, and then proceed together with Avin on the projects.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just get to the slide. Yeah, just an update on the production of gypsum at Kusile. So the ESKOM Rotec industries have been assigned to deal with the commercialization of gypsum. We've done some market research, ERI has, and there's quite an appetite for the project, mainly in the construction, building-related application, as well as agricultural. And about a week and a half ago, 10 days ago, the ERI board then approved the strategy for ERI then to proceed with the commercial process, and requested that it be concluded not later than the end of January 21 to bring it back then to the board. So if I move then over to slide 52, I think I've dealt with this one, holding contractors accountable for substandard work as well as for overpayment. Again, I'm referring here to Fidic, the standard form of contract that we're using. So we have sometimes 2 weekly reviews, but at least once a month we have reviews that we look through each and every contract. We make sure that when a contract is nearing about 6 months before it's coming to its end, that we start dealing with the contract, that we don't go into modifications and obviously condemnations as well. So I can confirm that we are on ongoing basis review all our contracts, and then we have adequate. Although the GC has spoken earlier about the appointment of 150 people in the contracts management environment, we have, we believe, sufficient supervision that is on site, that is amongst the contractors, to make sure that whatever has been tendered and what the scope of the work is actually executed. Where we have non-conformances, we deal with that as per a very documented, well-documented process. And then obviously the issue of the defect notification period is also receiving quite a lot of attention to make sure that all the defects are properly and adequately dealt with, that we don't sit with another boiler defects, latent defect situation that we currently have at Medupi as well as Kusile. If I then move over to Medupi and Kusile projects, Chair, let me just, I'm now on slide number 50, I'm on slide 54. Currently we have at Medupi 5 of the 6 units in commercial operation. The last unit is in the process, it's been synchronized to the grid, and it is planned for commercial operation in this financial year, in 2020 financial year. The team on site, although COVID is making it more difficult at this point in time, very challenging actually, trying to get it in commercial operation by the end of December. However, the official target is by February in 2021. What we have seen is that, and then at Kusile, we have 3 units that is contributing to the grid, but only 1 unit at this point in time. Unit number 1 is in commercial operation. Today, when I was there, I saw this, that was 731 megawatts it was actually generating. And unit number 2, that is a non-commercial unit, was also generating just 699, just under 700 megawatts. So it was quite good to see the 2 units both at 700 megawatts producing electricity. So unit number 3 at Kusile has been synchronized to the grid, and both unit number 2 and 3, we will have it in commercial operation that is planned before the end of the financial year. What we have seen is a slow but steady increase in the energy availability. So the performance of these 2 stations slowly but surely is moving in the right direction. If we then move to slide number 55, Chair, the ESKOM board has there's full commitment from the ESKOM board to complete both Medupi as well as Kusile. And the revised dates, that was approved, or the dates that was approved back in 2014-15 remains pegs in the ground. So as I just said, Medupi to complete it in the financial year 2020-21, and to make sure that the last unit in Kusile will be 2023-2024. So at this point in time, December 2023. However, there is significant risks, specifically at Kusile, in terms of the current corruption investigations, the ones that I referred to earlier, as well as COVID-19, the impact of that. At this point in time, the approved project values that was approved again in 2014-15 remains as is. So 145 billion for Medupi and 161.4 billion for Kusile. If I move on to slide number 56, that is just showing, Chair, at this point in time, the P80, the difference between P80, when we talk about P80 and a P50, P50 is all the risk that we've identified. Should 50% of that materializes, that's when we talk about P50, and a P80 of those risks, 80% of them materializes. So at this point in time, should only 50% of the risks that we've identified materialize, and we cannot adequately deal with it and have remedies in place, we're talking about 145 billion, as I said. However, we are targeting to go for 135 billion. What we have spent today is 118. So the overall construction, 99%. So we're nearly there. And then on Kusile, what we have spent to date, 137 and 87%. So the difference there between what your inception to date and what the construction physical work has been, you cannot just take the two directly linked, because we have significant claims from contractors. I had a look today at Kusile. Just at Kusile alone, we have claims to the value of excess of nearly 20 billion rand that we need to deal with. If I go to slide 57, so this is just showing in terms of P50, should only 50% of the risk materialize, is in Medupi not later than February 21, and then the last unit, Kusile, by December 2023. If I move then on to slide 58, Medupi 1, the last unit, commissioning is progressing quite well. We had some challenges in terms of the dust handling plant. However, the contracts have been placed now with our own internal company, ESKOM Industries. And I believe that the commissioning and all the capabilities are moving successfully forward. If I move into slide 59, I think I've spoken about this slide, what we have achieved in terms of Medupi 3, and the plans to get the other 5 units also to do the implementation of all the design modifications. I must admit that we are really excited about the improvement since this unit is back, unit number 3. Really, really excited. So we will now see, as I said earlier, unit number 6 that came back today, how that will perform. Then Kusile units 2 and 3, the 2 non-commercial units, at any given point in time, they're contributing, around 500 megawatts to the grid, really assisting specifically in terms of the demand that we had. While I'm talking about the demand, we've been successfully through the peak tonight. We had an excess, the demand was in excess of 32,000 megawatts. Last night it was 33,500 megawatts because it was more colder last night. But we've been successfully through it. So, and it's mainly also because these non-commercial units are assisting us. If I jump then to slide 61, Kusile units 4 and 6, those are the units that we've put in preservation when the lockdown started. Slowly but surely, we're mobilizing the contractors back to site, but we make absolutely sure that we deal effectively with the COVID pandemic. Personally, myself, been stopped today 4 times since I entered Kusile, the main gate, where I've been tested, where I need to sign, temperature being tested. So and then also I haven't said that to the project director. I haven't seen one contractor today without the mask. So really, we're taking this very seriously. Then there has been also a good improvement in terms of the energy availability at Kusile. If we go to slide, I'd like to go to slide 63. 62 basically is only showing a graphical sort of a demonstration on, we've got 11 main gates that we need to jump over before you actually put a unit into commercial operation. And all we've done there is just to show in terms of a green little right tick, what we have achieved in terms of all those units. And there we can clearly see that Kusile unit 4, 5, and 6, a lot of work that needs to happen. And Medupi 1, Kusile 2 and 3, the last hurdle is waiting, and that is commercial operation. 63, just briefly, is to show some of the risks that we've categorized. Basically, stability challenges, some production, productivity challenges. Then something that is becoming more and more a challenge for us is the contractors' liquidity. Really a big challenge that is waiting for us. And then availability and reliability. So we have identified these risks. We drill down into each and every one of them, and we have remedies for each and every one of them. Some of them very successful, obviously some of them, neutral, and some of them not successful, but we're working on these risks, because this is what is referred to some of the P50 and the P80 risks that I've spoken about earlier. Then the last slide, Chair, is just the COVID-19 readiness. I'm not going to go into detail, I'll just give an overview. At Kusile Power Station, we had one case, positive case, COVID-19 case at Mitsubishi. So the individual has been quarantined. He's doing extremely well. All the individuals and his co-workers that he had been in contact with, they've been tested negative. What we found out afterwards, that he came back from the Western Cape. So, and before I'm going to say what we've done, is then we had one case at Medupi as well, also at Mitsubishi. Again, this individual has, all the individuals that co-worked with him, been tested negative. The individual is doing extremely well. When we followed up, we then found out that this individual was coming from the Eastern Cape. So the 2 hotspots in the country. So what we have subsequently done is throughout ESKOM, the projects as well as the operations, is to put this into the organization to say, please make sure that when individuals come back, please make sure where are they coming from. So COVID-19, our response to that, I can confirm, and the chief can talk about that himself. We meet every afternoon at 5 o'clock, and then we talk about what has happened in terms of this pandemic. So we take it extremely serious. And I'm very proud of, if you take only the 2 cases in Medupi, one in Medupi and one at Kusile. So we're really putting a lot of attention. Chair, Chief, that is all from my side. Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. That concludes the presentation that ESKOM has put together for the Portfolio Committee, the Select Committee, tonight. If I can now hand back to you, Chair, and we're in your hands.
All right. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I think all of us, of course, had gone through the presentation, and I think the salient points have been covered. So let us go straight to questions. I'm going to start with the Honourable Dirks, given the fact that he's got electricity problems and before his devices run out of battery. and then Honorable Van Minen, and then Honorable Mente. We'll go in that order. Wait, Honorable Dirks.
Can I continue, Chair?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Chair, just yesterday from 5 o'clock in the evening till 12 o'clock, I had no electricity. And again, now electricity went off at 5 o'clock. And you know, when electricity goes off, communities doesn't understand about municipalities and all that. They just think ESKOM when electricity goes off. And I've been receiving quite a few messages on WhatsApp here from people in Pietermaritzburg telling me that you are sitting in SCOPA with ESKOM and we are sitting without electricity. What are you doing about it? Chair, let me start off with the issue about, I was not going to raise it again because I raised it when we done the oversight to ESKOM, to Matupi and Kusile. When we done that oversight, I raised the issue about take or pay. I really have a serious problem with that issue of take and pay, Chair. I do not know if there no better way that we can do it in future. I understand what the gentlemen have explained about why they have that system in place, but surely there should be a better way. There should be a better way of doing it. Because if you look at the take and pay, it has cost ESKOM 9.2 billion, almost 10 billion rand. Now, that cost that we have incurred of 9.2 billion is a direct result of us failing to complete the Kusile and Matupi power station projects. So I want us to add that 9.2 billion on the project cost, and so we can see at the end of the day by how much have we overrun on that project. But I believe that 9.2 million must be added to the project cost. Of what was the cost, what was the estimate cost of completing those 2 power stations, and what is the cost currently, and you must still add the 9.2 billion rand, because that is a direct result of our failure to complete those projects. But having said that, my first question is Deloitte and Price Waterhouse. I see that the irregular contracts and that now Deloitte have agreed to pay back 150 million rand. That is fine. But my question is this here. We as SCOPA, we actually want to see consequences. And I will not be happy with the mere fact that we are recovering 150 million rand. We want to see criminal prosecutions. We want to see criminal charges brought against the official that have awarded this contract irregularly, and we also want to see criminal charges against Deloitte, because surely Deloitte is a well-respected auditing firm internationally, and surely they should have known if this contract was awarded to them properly or irregularly. And there's no such a thing that these things happen on one side. There's always a second party involved when a contract gets awarded irregularly. So definitely there was somebody in Deloitte that was part of this irregular awarding with the official from ESKOM. So to tell us today that you have brought criminal charges against Deloitte is not good. To tell us that we are recovering 150 million rand from Deloitte, for me personally, that is not good enough. I would want to see that we bring criminal charges against Deloitte or the individuals in Deloitte that was involved in this irregular contract that was awarded to them. So we want to see criminal prosecution. We do not just want to see monies recovered. That's the first thing. The second issue is on the issue of the investigations on Mr. Brian Mollefe's pension payout. Can ESKOM please clarify this thing here for us? Because you read in the media and you're not clear what is actually happening. Because the matter went to court. The court ruled against Mr. Mulletf that he must pay back the pension payout to him that was paid to him, which amounted to about 17 million rand was paid to him, as the media was reporting. But up till to date, Mr. Brian Mulletf have not paid back that money, because Mr. Brian Mulletf claims that ESKOM never paid him 17 million rand. He claims that he has been paid 7 million rand pension from by ESKOM, and from the 7 million, 4 million was pension that he brought over from Transnet to ESKOM. So he claims that there was no 17 million that was ever paid to him in pension. Now, can ESKOM please clarify this matter for us? Was Mr. Brian Mulletf paid 17 million rand pension payout, or was he paid 7 million rand? And from the 7 million rand, how much was ESKOM's contribution? One clarity on that whole thing there, because the court ruled that Mr. Mulletf must pay back. Mr. Lever says he has not paid back because he says he have not received 17 million rand, but ESKOM tells us they have paid him 17 million. So can ESKOM clear up that one for us? That is the second one. The third one, Mr. Chair, is the issue of and I think unfortunately I see that the COO of ESKOM is also present here today. The third one is the issue about stocks and stocks, Chair. Chair, we need clarity on the issue about stocks and stocks. You can't be reading things in the media, big articles, headline articles, that stocks and stocks has been involved in irregularly receiving tenders at ESKOM. And then there was further allegations that was made that the COO of ESKOM was or is still a director of stocks and stocks, and stocks have been been awarded irregular contract. That thing needs to be investigated. We must investigate that thing there. And if you investigated, how do you keep the CEO in ESKOM whilst you're investigating stocks and stocks, where he's also allegedly being implicated in the matter? So the stocks and stocks issue, we want answered on the stocks and stocks issue. Then lastly, Chair, sometime or the other, the minister, the department, and ESKOM will have to go to the public and take the public in its confidence. South Africa needs answers. We see this thing of shouting and screaming of corruption, and thereafter you go away and you don't make no follow-up on it. It's not good for the country. It's not good for our economy. It's not good for the government. It's not good for us as politicians. It's more damaging for us when we shout corruption and we don't follow up with action on when we have things. So sometimes the minister and the department will have to go out to the public, call a press conference, and take South Africans through what has actually happened in ESKOM and give them answers and explain to them step by step what went wrong in ESKOM and how have they remedied it and what corruption took place in ESKOM and who has been charged. Because we must stop this thing of shouting corruption and then we don't follow it up. But Chair, we really need answers on the issue about stocks and stocks. We know stocks and stocks was involved in price fixing, which they call price fixing, which is basically corruption, but they have beautiful, nice terms for it. Price fixing. We know they were involved in price fixing. We want to know their involvement in the ESKOM debacle. Thank you, Chair.
All right, no, that's fine. Honorable Van Minen, you are next. Honorable Swartz, I have noted you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got a couple of issues. Firstly, when we got the written report last week, it was substantially the same as the one we got at the end of March. So I'm very glad to see the updated slides. If we could please ensure that is carried through into a properly updated report as well. I want to start with slide 18, the Wilfa housing project. It talks there about what's essentially a 76 million rand loss due to the negligence of its former general manager, but there is also there have also been instructions to recover that. Now, if it's due to negligence, I want to know, is that claim just because of principle, or is there in fact a intention of getting it back? If there is hope of getting it back from the person who appeared to have been responsible for the loss, how can that just be negligence? My third point is 6.18, which is slide 40, the project directors at Kusile. Now, I'm very pleased to see that someone has been appointed who appears to have a solid background, but how do we know that that will ensure assurance of stability going forward? The problem has been that they've lasted such a short time that has been problematic. How do we know going forward we will have stability now? Then on 619, this is really my big concern. The ongoing negotiations with New Largo and Sariti. I mean, Kusile was cited where it is in part because of that coal field. We're now getting dates of 2026 for the first coal to be delivered. How could this entire situation have been allowed to essentially stagnate for a decade? The history is distinctly dubious. And I just want to know, is there any attempt to actually expedite this? One can't continue with the current situation with hundreds of trucks going into the site every day. It has enormous cost implications, environmental implications, security implications, implications for coal quality. And I just want to get some detail on how ESKOM is actually trying to expedite the situation so we actually see a resolution here instead of a situation which just seems to go on and on and on. And then finally, on slide 6.3, the stability challenges and also the liquidity issues, particularly considering COVID-19. Can we just have some expansion on that? Why are these stability issues becoming an issue? Why are we seeing local community protests? What is being done to deal with that? Because that can be extremely disruptive. And then obviously the contractors' liquidity with the economic issues and challenges that we have coming out of COVID-19 and the effect on the economy. What is ESKOM doing to reduce those risks as far as possible? Because one obviously doesn't want to see litigation and all kinds of delays coming out of that. Thank you very much.
All right, Honorable Mente. Colleagues, we will have a second round if we manage our time well, and so that we can also make sure you get your follow-ups and ensure your questions are answered. So thank you for being pointed as you have been. Honorable Mente, over to you. Honorable Mente.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairperson. The first thing I want to say, Chair, is that we need explanation on the so-called erroneous payment. Whether it's for the 4 billion or the 5 billion, we want explanation on that. We want to know where is it, who was it paid to, who paid it to that person, and what happened. And then secondly, Chair, on the matter of the COO, there is a report on the COO which no one else can access. In terms of 6.5 of the recommendations, we have recommended that the SOE ESKOM must undertake vetting of all people, in particular those that are handling the business of ESKOM, where the exchange of contracts, exchange of money, and anything that has to do with the business itself. COO is part of those people. Did we get a vetting of the COO? What is the status of his vetting? And what are the statuses of all the managers? I see the list that's displayed on the page, or which talks to what the ESKOM has done in terms of 6.5 recommendation. Some of them are still awaiting outcomes from the body that vets them. But those that they have received the outcomes, what are the outcomes? Is there anyone who was rejected in terms of the vetting, where the security clearance was not clear or not sent out? And on declarations, everything that they have declared in terms of their interest, is there anyone who has a business that's operating and doing business with ESKOM? If so, who are those people and why are they allowed to do business with ESKOM? And I want to go back to the COO report. Why is the COO report not issued for everyone to see? Because you are operating under the funds of the state, and nothing can be confidential when we have to police the funds of the taxpayers. In terms of the cases, there is a separate document that you have sent to us. I think it's also a 65-pager. It still does not give us what we want to know. There are cases that are sent to law enforcement.
Honorable Mentor, you've muted yourself.
Is this okay?
You said you lost you saying there are cases with law enforcement. That's where we lost you.
Okay. There are cases with law enforcement with a detailed amount, but there are cases where people resigned. There's no amount attached to those people. Are they not known? Are they not serving in other departments in South Africa? Are they not residents of South Africa that they have resigned with the monies of the department? So is there any mechanism that's put in place in terms of recoveries? We are not told anything in terms of the people who have resigned when the process of investigating them kicked off. But the irony is that the amount is not attached to those persons. And that is very much disturbing. And as far as what the SOE itself, ESKOM, has undertaken investigation, it's not clear as to what are the outcomes of those investigations. It's not clear on what basis and how much have those people offered to pay back, or how much is ESKOM demanding from those individuals. Chair, I want to share the same sentiments as Honorable Dirks. The reason why we have ESKOM here in SCOPA today is solely because we need to follow the funds that have been allocated to ESKOM. It's taxpayers' money. It's not our money. It's not your money as officials. And the other reason why you are here is solely because ESKOM is in a dire situation. And if we are not going to end corruption and deal with corruption at ESKOM, we are not going to get anywhere. Today, you are giving us new timelines in terms of finishing your projects of Medupi and Kusile. If those timelines are going to be tainted by people who are corrupt, award contracts that they know for a fact that those contracts are not supposed to be awarded, pay people who have not rendered any service, and nothing happens to them, or they are allowed to resign without accounting for whatever they have done at ESKOM, that timeline is going to shift again. So we are going to start now. Can you go back, correct the list of the people you have given us? Give us a clear outcome of each case at how much are you recovering from those people? How much have you lost? If not, on the ones that go to law enforcement, you do not have control over that space. But how far are the cases? I see in some cases you have given a feedback in terms of their statuses, but that's not enough, because it looks like some of these cases were only forwarded when we started saying so. They are barely new. There are cases in terms of those that are on the red, that are over 90 days. Why do we still have cases that are over 90 days? What is the problem? Why can't we finish them? That is why most people then get a space. You are affording them an opportunity to leave with the money. You are even affording them an opportunity to leave the country. Only now that you will be saved by the COVID-19 that they cannot leave the country. The last part of my questions, Chairperson, is the issue of the Medupi and Kusile itself and the phases thereof that are going to be implemented in terms of servicing these electricity generating units. You are saying now Medupi is generating on its own unit. In fact, both of them, they are, in terms of you, they are giving you satisfactory generation of electricity. However, you are going to be taking them one by one down in terms of units. And you are giving us how much at the end of your presentation you are going to be utilizing in realizing the finalization of all of these services you are going to be doing or projects. Can you ascertain that your costing is not going to extend? And in one of your projects, I don't know which one, you are actually saying you are going to finalize the project at a lower cost than the initial one, which has been budgeted for. Can you ascertain that now? And if you have 100% certainty that that is going to happen, what should happen to all of you from CEO, COO, CFO, if that is not the case? Thank you very much.
All right, Honorable Swartz.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I have got a couple of questions.
Shoot.
On slide page 33, whichever they deem it to be, whether it's a slide or page to them, in the response, the entity provided an explanation of what should happen in contract management at ESKOM. And they responded that as part of monitoring the existing contract to National Treasury for approval on an annual basis and monitored on a quarterly.
Honorable Swartz, we seem to have lost you there. Honorable Swartz.
And there are no consequences for responsible officials. The entity is abusing the provision of procurement through deviation, even in cases where normal procurement processing should be followed.
Honorable Swartz, I think your network is having some problem. All right, Honorable Swart. All right, IT, I'll request that you mute her and we'll try and reconnect her. Sis Dombi, please just advise her that she is probably frozen or offline, and we'll take her when she comes in so that we manage time correctly. The Honorable Maotwe.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening to the colleagues. Chair, we come back again to SCOPA, having made a request the last time that we be finished with the report on the investigation of the COO. We come back here, we still don't have the report. I just want to remind the committee that on the 15th of April, it was ESKOM that announced that they've done the investigation and nothing was found to be any of fault to the COO. On the 16th of April, we wrote a letter asking for the report. The last SCOPA meeting I attended and I asked for the report. Today again is the 18th of June. I come back here, I still don't have the report. And we are made to believe that there's transparency and accountability in SOEs. So I don't know what else to do, Chairperson, but I really wish that the report can be made available. Otherwise, we are getting an impression that actually the report does not exist. Even the investigation itself does not exist, and it never happened because we're not getting anything. So I'm appealing to you, Chair, to assist us in getting the report. of the investigation of the COO. Secondly, the 4 companies that were handpicked by the CEO, have that decision being reversed? I went through the presentation, Chair, and I was expecting to see some mention of it in the document, especially from slide number 16 when it talks about financial recovery of financial losses. I see companies listed there, which I welcome, but I would have loved to see the 4 because they were irregularly appointed. And the question is, what have they done so far, and how much project has been awarded to these 4 companies that were handpicked, that had not gone through any process whatsoever? They floated the process. They disregarded everything else that has got to do with supply management. And what consequence management has been taken against the CEO for conducting such act when he knows very well that what he did is wrong? My third question is, Chair, we've seen executives in ESKOM having made disclosure to the Zondo Commission and coming back to ESKOM to be victimized. We're sitting with cases here of high-level executives who are currently being victimized. They've been taken out from their positions, been sent to the positions that they didn't apply for, and that is done heartlessly, and that is affecting the families of these executives. Now, the question is to the minister, what are you doing to make sure that you protect the whistleblowers of ESKOM? What are you doing to ensure that they're not being victimized, they're not even being threatened to be dismissed? And Chair, I will pause there for now. I only asked for 3 questions, and I'm really appealing to ESKOM executives to just answer these 3 questions. And thank you, Chair.
All right, colleagues, that seems to be the end of the list that was there. Honorable Swartz is back online. Honorable Swartz, are you back?
Yes, Chair, I'm back.
Okay, let's hand over to you then. And you can just maybe take it from the top of the questions you wanted to ask.
Yes, I was saying, Chair, that the entities abusing the provisions of procurement through deviations, even in cases where normal procurement processes should be followed. The committee should be provided with a clear and practical process for contract management. Is there a dedicated contract management unit? Is it fully capacitated? Who do they report to? What happens to divisions that do not adhere to the prescripts? And then according to, on slide 33, according to ESKOM's response, all defects are being dealt with in accordance to contractual conditions with specific reference to the Mitsubishi Hitachi Power System Africa boiler defects. The contract level discussion is followed under the guidance of ESKOM management and MPHSA executive. Does ESKOM management have the required expertise in addressing these defects? The response from ESKOM paints a picture that the entity has control in managing these defects. If this is the case, why are there still delays in Kusile and Medupi as construction, Chair? And Chair, on slide 38, ESKOM detailed a process on management of coal quality. This process is summarized on these slides. So I want to ask ESKOM to give us a detailed processes, how they verify coal quality. Has there been any major challenges or disputes between the findings of these different laboratories? Are these findings documented on a regular basis? And then slide 45. The entity has provided responses on recommendations on the offloading facility. Construction started in 2015 and is still being executed. The schedule in 5 phases. 2 have been completed. The 3rd phase is still being executed and will be completed in June 2020. Is the phase 3 still going to be completed in June 2020? What is the status on this? How has the COVID-19 delayed the completion? When is phase 4 and 5 going to be completed? Additional way bridges. Is the completion of August 2020 still feasible? Taking into account effects of the national lockdown, the committee should be provided with revised completion dates if the August 2020 completion date will not be met. The additional feed conveyor, AFC, work has started and planned to be completed in August 2020. Is this additional feed conveyor going to be completed in August 2020? The new Largo Coalfields project. ESKOM has provided detailed progress on the new Largo Coalfield project from March 2007 to 2020. The entity is still negotiating, is engaging Sereti, the lead for new Largo. The details of quality, quantity, and terms are detailed on slides 47 and 52. And on slide 52, Chair, up to slide 56, the entity has provided a whole lot of issues around Medupi. The take-or payment amounted to 9.1 billion, and this is all according to the nature of contract signed with the coal suppliers. From the explanations provided by the entity, it appears that this contractual agreement is considered acceptable in similar industries. And ESKOM Roadtech Industries has been assigned to conduct market research and deal with the commercialization of this product. How far is this process, and when can it start generating revenue for ESKOM? I will take another take, Chair, if we get given a second round.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. No, thank you very much, colleagues. I see no other hands. Mam Tolashe, all right, Mam Tolashe, noted. I've seen your message in the group. Right. Let's just quickly zoom into some of the matters. When we last met, there was issues which related to 4 companies, CEO, you will recall, and National Treasury subsequently sent correspondence to you to explain the position in regard so far these 4 companies is concerned, and the appointment of service providers in general consistent with the PFMA and the Treasury regulations. So I would imagine that you will speak to that, but in the context now of what National Treasury communicated to you, and to then find out whether any of those 4 companies have received any work from ESKOM since we last met, and if they have, what process was followed to appoint them. Then we want to, then there's the issues around the COO and the investigation through an external auditor, which was brought in, investigator, to investigate that. If you can speak to that, and we want the full report of that particular investigation, for that to be submitted to us. The report of the senior counsel, which investigated the allegations leveled against the COO. Then there is, I would request that CEO, you explain in detail the circumstances of the 5 billion rands, which is because I heard what you said, but I think that it will be beneficial if you are thorough and extensive on that one, because it just does raise particular discomfort. right? Then there's the issue of the recoveries and potential recuperations of funds from all the cases that you are pursuing. What is the projected amount that you are hoping to actually get out of the issues that you are following? I'm going to come back on the issue of vetting when we for the next round of matters. I want to reiterate the issue that has been raised by Honorable Van Minen, because the issue of New Largo and Seriti, when we were at Kusile in August 2019, some 9 months ago, 10 months ago, it was that the matter would have been concluded, or the negotiations and discussions would have been concluded in January latest. That's what we were informed. And of course, that was pre-COVID, so there's certainly there would be no excuse for why the matters were not concluded. So, because the point must be driven home that Kusile sits on top of a coal mine precisely for the ease of the movement of coal. And now you are getting coal elsewhere with some 400 trucks per day. So what has stalled the negotiations in that regard? Yeah, I think because the chair of the board is also present, albeit the circumstances that have been explained, I would request that he also speaks to the investigation insofar the COO is concerned, because he's a high-ranking official in the institution, and therefore it's important that we deal with those matters. Right, so what we'll do is we're going to get responses from that first round of questions, and then we'll come back for follow-ups and round it up. So what I'll do is, Minister, I will start with you, and then we will move on to the management and executives of ESKOM. Right, Honourable Minister, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. We will refer most of the specific questions to the officials present from ESKOM, but let me address a few of the issues. On the two firms, Deloitte and PwC, the CEO can explain. But Chair, both in respect of that and coal suppliers.
Just 1 second, sorry, there's just Honorable Somyo, before you respond, wants to pose a question. Let's maybe finish off with those. I had not seen his name on the list. Honorable Somyo? Honorable Somyo?
Honorable Chair.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Sorry about.
No problem. I think you have served me with a number of questions that you have asked so far. There's only one pertinent question for me, which comes from the coal management instance, where in terms of the report, there's a view that take-or-pay principle is more favorable in as far as ESKOM's approach is concerned. I would prefer, if that is the case, that they would provide us with some cost-benefit analysis as to the direction of worthiness of that approach to ESKOM in both financial terms and as well in the management benefits in as far as ESKOM is concerned. To us, the loss is huge towards ESKOM than it would have been the case which has been advanced here in terms of the report. The second point is the point that relate to the investigations. There's plus 130 of those who are investigated, whether is I don't know whether the CON reports on that in terms of the writing. There's a view that it says if there's a potential referral to a private outsourced investigation in as far as those 130 plus instances. Can he be clear at what is actually happening in terms of those 130 plus investigations, so that we are somewhat assured as to that there is progress around those investigations, which are in terms of the internal practice. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay. All right, Honourable Minister, you can proceed.
Thank you, Chair. As I was saying, I'll leave some of the technical issues to the CEO and his colleagues to respond to. And the second point I was making, Chair, is that it might be beneficial if the committee, both in the instance of the accounting firms, but also in the instance of the coal suppliers, actually calls them to the committee and asks them to explain some of the issues that you are raising today. But that direct interaction might be very useful. And it's important that the private sector that deals with public entities is also held to account, because they're actually consuming public funds in some ways. But I'll leave it to the committee to actually decide on that. On the matter of corruption cases and criminal cases, we'll try to get a better list than what ESKOM has perhaps provided up to now. But the point in response to Honorable Dirks is that not every corruption case is necessarily a criminal case, firstly. But secondly, in the instance of cases that have been registered with the Hawks and others, and perhaps that's the list that should be provided to you, the law enforcement agencies should actually be called, because we have no control over them or access to at what stage they are in relation to the investigations, unless the board is going to contradict me on that. Then, in relation to the points that Honorable Mulletf is making about victimization, I think it'll be good if she can provide me with the names of some of the individuals concerned. But there might well be an explanation in the context where we found that for some reason, in the past years, most of the engineers and experts of that nature who are best utilized at power stations were actually brought in to the head office. And you would have been aware that over time we've informed you about the relinking process, and the ESKOM CEO can explain that to you, which now requires that if you want to improve the performance at power stations, it's important that these experts are now redeployed, if you like, excuse me, to the power stations themselves. That might have caused some inconvenience in some cases, but that does not amount to victimization. But if there's a genuine case or cases of victimization, the honourable member should give us a list of names that we can look into, and we can come back to you on that. On the COO report, we ourselves have been looking for this report, and it has been provided to us, I think, today. But the chair still has to sign a formal letter in this particular regard, so we haven't had time to peruse it ourselves. But once the board has cleared it, we'll release it to you. Save that, Chair, there are names and so on that might be mentioned in there. So the legal implications of that needs to be worked out carefully, because ESKOM shouldn't be sued because it's releasing something that was said in an inquiry. But I'm sure ESKOM has obtained its own legal advice in that particular regard. Like yourselves, I think it's important that ESKOM helps you and the public to understand the 5 billion and the 4 billion, because those are two different amounts for two different purposes and two different explanations. And I'm sure the CEO will help you to understand that distinction. On the take-or-pay cost-benefit analysis that Honorable Somyo makes, I think it's a good suggestion. And perhaps some atypical examples can be used, meaning not with reference to a particular mining supplier or not, because that has, again, commercial implications. But some illustrative examples should be provided to the committee so that you can understand the distinction in that particular regard. I also agree with the frustration that many members have expressed about people resigning, and I'm sure that the committee is aware that this is a common feature, both in the public service, but also at SOE level. There was a time when we talked about blacklisting individuals who have engaged in corrupt activity, resign, and then find themselves elsewhere within the state, a practice that I think should not be approved by anyone. So additional mechanisms need to be put in place, perhaps with the help of the Minister of Public Service and Administration, to ensure that these individuals do not find themselves back in the public sector, firstly. But secondly, I think the point that honorable members are making, which I agree with, is that they should nonetheless, if they have committed criminal acts, face criminal charges wherever that is appropriate. And so that is something that perhaps needs to be pursued if it hasn't been. I'm not aware of the individual cases, so I can't comment on them. And that's not for us to engage in and influence in any kind of way. But the general principle is one that I concur with. With that, let me hand over to the chair and the CEO, Chair.
All right, let's get the CEO, no, the chair of the board.
Hello.
You can proceed, Prof.
Yeah, I concur with everything that the minister has said, that we prepared, I think, the investigative report on the COO, and we are in principle in agreement to releasing it, but we want to take into account all the issues that the minister has raised, that there may be people's names there that may later sue ESKOM for their names being mentioned rather than for having done anything in particular. So in principle, there's nothing wrong, but I want to urge the committee, I think, just to bear that in mind, that transparency is not the same thing as being naked. So I think we must just learn that. We have to be careful in order, I suppose, to be transparent in a very responsible manner. In due time, this report will be released, and it will be released in a manner that makes us all proud. And that's what we want to do in order to support your committee, sir. That's all I need to say.
No, that is fine, Minister and Chair. I think what I'll request is that put those concerns and considerations in writing for us.
Okay.
And then what I will do is that I will engage with Parliament's legal services, as I'm sure our legal advisor of the committee is also online, and they are listening to this. And then we will proceed. Safe to say that we must not create an impression of handling things differently for some and differently for others. And just to put out the principle there that we have always indicated that people must be named. And unless, of course, in your correspondence, you will explain concretely the extent of these reservations, and then we will satisfy ourselves as to whether there's merit or not on those. But we will. So I'll request that we proceed in that fashion, because ultimately we want that report for the simple but very significant fact that it's a report about the chief operations officer of the institution of ESKOM. That's a very senior member of the executive, and it is only important that all the structures of oversight satisfy themselves correctly insofar as the due processes that were followed in that investigation. So I think that we will rather get your reservations in writing, or your the issues you raise, so that we've got it concretely, and then we will take a decision after we've consulted and gotten our own legal advice. So I think we can put that matter there and as a work in progress. But it raises the eyebrow when we are now creating a special dispensation for a report. But yeah, I note what you say, and we'll proceed in that fashion. Right?
Chair.
Yes.
Chair.
Yes, Honourable Mente.
Yes, Chair. If we follow the rules of Parliament properly, would understand that anything that comes to Parliament as evidence, a piece of evidence or something said in Parliament for accountability of tax funds has nothing to do with suing. You can't be taken to court for that, unless then a report has questionable methods or process that the SOE, which is ESKOM, doesn't want us to see. Because in this case, we want them to account for the COO who was allegedly involved. In fact, his company is involved in doing business with ESKOM. He must clear himself. So that document cannot be a document that can be held against Parliament when it has to account to Parliament where taxpayers' money is concerned. Thank you, Chair.
No,
Chairperson, if I may address you.
Yes, Minister.
No, I think nothing that I've said must be construed as not being transparent. So as I said, we've only accessed the report sometime today. And haven't even had time to go through it. So all we're saying is that the normal cautions apply here, and we will definitely I will interact with the board and make sure that the report is available to you as soon as we can get some clearance, hopefully by Tuesday or Wednesday next week, if not sooner.
No, that's fine, Minister. I think the reason why I was adopting the approach that I did was so that we could safeguard ourselves after what had been said, but also one must give due regard to the fact that if the report gives birth to other investigations which must not be compromised, that's also a consideration that I had to make. And therefore, that's why I'm saying put the reservations in writing, and then we will look at those with Parliament Legal Services, and we'll make a determination on that. But the principle remains that the report must be submitted. That is certainly not in dispute. We want the report, right? The CEO, over to you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, for the opportunity to respond to the Honourable Members' questions. Let me start with the 5 billion rand, and if I may ask my colleague, Mr. Dan Mashigo, to just explain the origin of the 5 billion rand in terms of the various claims for a lack of supply by Tegeta to ESKOM, and how the 5 billion rand came about. Dan, if I can ask you to give some greater clarity there, please.
Thanks, GC. Thanks, Chair. The 5 billion rand estimate amount relates to the penalty claim for the Tegeta optimum contract. So maybe if I can rewind a little bit, that in February 2018, Tegeta board placed, like 3 of its collieries, which happened to also supply coal to ESKOM under business rescue. So, and the 3 different, collieries followed, individual business rescue processes. So there was already penalty claims prior to the mine being placed under business rescue, which relate to both, I think, quality and supply. And post business rescue on a monthly basis, when the mine did not supply, we basically raised a failure to supply, which is an opposite of take or pay. I mean, it's part of the take or pay principle in this case. The mine did not supply. There are clauses in the contract which quantifies for every ton what should ESKOM claim. And those claims accumulated for the optimum contract to the exact amount is 5.6. I think we round it off and say 5 billion. It's about 5.6 billion. That's basically, Chair, where it emanates from. So it's a combination of prior to business rescue penalties which were levied against the supplier for both quality and quantity, and post business rescue, which is where the majority of this particular claim emanates from. It's mainly for failure by the colliery to supply. Although they were under business rescue, the contract was not suspended. We exercise our right to implement, the contract. When we went into the business rescue process, like other creditors, that's basically what we put onto the table to stake our claim on the settlement of the colliery, that by the time the colliery sold, because it was placed under business rescue with intention to sell to other off-takers, is that when that particular transaction is made, when the apportionment is made, this is what's going to determine the ESKOM's, a portion of the settlement. As the CES mentioned, there are other creditors, in this particular fold. Some are guaranteed creditors, others are basically suppliers, there's employees and so forth. That's basically where it came from. And the 1.26 billion that is being referred to is that because there are other creditors, there is a voting block that has to be determined in the business rescue process. And as the CES mentioned, we basically, our voting block, came to that amount of about 1.26 billion rands. And that's basically what is in the claim related to the damages we've suffered, as ESKOM, because when the mine was not supplying, we had to go and source coal at a cost much higher, than the what the mine could have supplied until the contract lapsed at the 2018. That's basically what it deals with. The other two mines had their own processes, running. This is mainly the optimum which supplied Henry. I hope, Andre, I've clarified. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I hope that explanation is adequate on the origin of the 5 billion.
No, I will come back to it because I think there are still areas we need to deal with, but let's get responses to the questions so that in the round of follow-ups we will deal with it. But I will come back to that later.
Right, Chair, if I can then move on to the origin of the 4 billion, which you are quite correct is a different amount, and it has a different origin. During a visit by SCOA, the Standing Committee on Appropriations, to ESKOM during the 14th to the 16th of October 2019, they were informed that there were ongoing investigations by the SIU, by a firm of attorneys, as well as by ESKOM into the overpayment to contractors who were operating at that time, and in some instances still are operating at Kusile. These contractors are the following, and I have to stress here that this is not an agreed amount. This is still subject to contractual negotiation and in some cases dispute resolution through a variety of different forums. So ABB South Africa, on package 21A, there is an estimated overpayment of 1 billion rand. Tenova Mining and Minerals SA, Pty Limited, packages 24B, 24C and 24E. The estimated overpayment amounts to 735 million rand. Tubular Construction Projects, Pty Limited, package 11A and 17A, estimated overpayment 1 billion rand. Stefanuti Stocks, Basil Reed Joint Venture, package 16, and Stefanuti Stocks Izazi Joint Venture, package 28, estimated overpayment 1 billion rand. And then there are various site service contracts which are not in the SIU scope, where the estimated overpayment amounts to 180 million rand. Now, Chair, if you add up those amounts, they come to just under 4 billion rand. So that is the origin of the 4 billion rand that was addressed by SCOA. So quite legitimately, SCOA have asked us for an explanation on this. We have prepared a document on this, which we're happy to share with SCOPA as well, which sets out in detail what the status of each of these overpayments is and where we are, and more than happy to share that with the committee if you so wish.
No, that's fine. We will not interfere with the SCOA process. When you submit it to them, you will see us here as part of our records. But I will interact with the chairperson and we will keep a track on their deadlines and make sure that we receive it in good time as well.
Thank you, Chair. So I trust that this has addressed the issue of the 4 billion versus the 5 billion. They are completely different amounts and they have completely different origins. And the one is related to Optimum and Tegeta, the other one related to contractor overpayments at Kusile. Chair, if I can then move on to the other questions that were raised, and I'll try and deal with them as quickly as I can without derogating from the completeness. In response to the Honourable Dirks's question about potential criminal charges against Deloitte and PwC, again, this is not for us to pursue. We, at this point in time, have no indication that there was any criminal activity involved. These were contracts that, in the case of Deloitte and also PwC, was, in our opinion, unlawful and therefore entitled us to reclaim the funds from those two organizations. In the case of Deloitte, we have reached agreement with them and they have repaid us the 171 million rand. On PwC, the 95 million rand is still subject to dispute. But as far as we can tell, no criminal activity was committed, although the contracts may have been unlawful. And there's obviously a difference between those two. The respective ESKOM staff will be subject to further disciplinary investigation now that the matter has been concluded. Chair, if I can then move on to the matter of Minister Mulletf's pension. It is a complex issue because SARS is also involved and tax is claimed and refunds are being claimed. The ESKOM Pension Fund has taken the matter to court for a declaratory order. and a letter of demand was sent to the ESKOM pension fund following the court order demanding the payment of the 30 million, and the fund is now approaching the High Court for a declaratory order because the rules of the fund are silent on a refund. So the respondents in this matter were Minister Mulletf, SARS and ESKOM. The initial founding affidavit calculated various returns on this pension fund, and various supplementary affidavits were then submitted. Both SARS and Mr. Mulletf have opposed the relief, and the answering affidavits due to lockdown from both SARS and Mr. Mulletf were not filed because of the COVID-19 lockdown, and the matter is still therefore in front of the courts for further consideration. So, Chair, this is not a matter that is as yet resolved, but we are dealing with it in consultation with SARS and also working with the pension fund on this particular matter. If I can ask Mr. Oberholzer to comment on the recovery on Wilfa, the residential complex there, due to negligence, the question that the Honourable Van Minnen asked. I might just point out that negligence in and of itself does not constitute criminality. It may give rise to a right to reclaim damages founded on the law of delict, which is a civil matter, but it does not necessarily arise in criminal liability. So with that introduction, Jan, if you can just explain the Wilfa situation.
Yes, thanks. Anytime, thank you. To Kusile, when Kusile was started, we had to get accommodation for contractors and the artisans. So a decision was made to build 9 blocks of flats, about 8 to 10 kilometers as a crow fly from Kusile. It is a number of 336 units in the 9 blocks. So that went out to tender, I think, in 2013. That's what I read in the documentation. It was then awarded to a contractor for an amount, very low amount. So this complex of 9 blocks of flats is not 100% completed yet, so nobody has taken any occupation. We have bought all the beds and the cutlery and TVs, etc., for all these units. They are stored somewhere. So we've actually also invested quite a lot of money in putting a kitchen in place. So it is quite an amount that we invested in putting this accommodation together. So as I say, nobody has lived in it yet. So we spend all the money, and if you take the amount that initially it was tendered for and the tender that was awarded, we spend more than 300% more than the initial tender. But over and above that, we still had the contractors, we still had the artisans, so we had to go and get additional and other accommodation for them in the area, you know, Brockenspruit, Delmas, Witbank, etc. So this whole project was managed by a general manager of facilities. Over and above the Wilfa, there's also a number of issues in Lephalale, at Medupi, accommodation and facilities as well. So the individual then was subjected to a disciplinary process because of all the things that happened. And based on the outcome of the external counsel, it was to dismiss the individual and then to recover an amount of 75 million. So in a nutshell, that is the background. So it's a legal process. The individual then was dismissed. So it's a legal process that is taking its course now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. If I may then proceed, Honourable Chair, as the COO has indicated, we have now recently appointed a highly experienced project manager, Mr. Avin Maharaj, at Kusile. I have no reason to believe that his departure is imminent, so I would very much hope that his tenure at the project will lead to the successful delivery and conclusion of the project. So we expect to have stability with project management under his leadership. As far as New Largo is concerned, a number of honourable members have raised this particular matter. I have also personally made inquiries on this. I agree with the concerns that the members have expressed. We have, as a consequence of delays in securing the New Largo contract, we have overcommitted on the supply of coal by road, and those contracts need to run to their end before we can source coal in quantities from the two pits that my colleague Dan Mashigo has indicated. However, we are at this point in time busy conducting, at my instruction, an investigation into what the consequences are for the New Largo mine of increasing the burn rate of coal at Kusile, with other words, consuming more coal. Once that happens, then obviously the existing contracts will, the contract quantities will be consumed earlier on. And then also we are looking at potentially diverting some of the coal that is currently being delivered to Kusile by road to other mines. But this is an exercise that is ongoing at the moment, and once this is completed, we will be able to ascertain what an accelerated delivery date for the New Largo mine will be to deliver coal, hopefully on conveyor, so that we can get the benefit of cheaper coal at Kusile. Chair, then the Honourable Van Minen also made reference to the fact that as a consequence of COVID, but also generally of a lack of stability in the construction industry, that a number of contractors that we are dealing with are in business rescue or find themselves in very precarious financial situations. This is an ongoing concern for us, and it not only affects our generation business, but it also impacts on major transmission lines that we need to build. So this is a general concern to create adequate capacity in the contracting industry in South Africa. It is not something that ESKOM alone has the answer to, and this is maybe something that needs to be addressed in a wider forum, perhaps with other government departments also getting involved in this to give us assistance on this. In response to the questions raised by the Honourable Menti, we have, as I said, put in place a very stringent process to force people to declare their interests. This has been a very successful exercise. As I've indicated, both the board and the executive committee both have complied 100% with the requirement to declare all of their interests, and we are being very scrupulous in how we declare and vet those particular declarations. Unfortunately, owing to lockdown, some of the lower levels in the organization have not been able to submit their declarations as quickly as we would have liked to. I think the Minister, Honourable Chair, made reference to the fact that there is general frustration that we are not able to pursue the people who have resigned as I've indicated in my presentation, our audit and forensic team have now taken a different approach, and where the likelihood of recovery and the amount to be recovered are sufficiently large and warranted by a cost-benefit analysis, they will then pursue those cases in order to recover monies where there is a likelihood that we will be able to be successful. Similarly, the Honourable Mentor is 100% correct that we have too many cases that take longer than 90 days to resolve. This was in fact a subject of discussion at a board committee today in order to capacitate the chairpersons of our disciplinary hearings to train them and to ensure that they are aware of their rights and their obligations in order to bring these matters to a more rapid closure. These issues are also now tracked as part of our reporting structures of our divisional boards, and at every divisional board, these outstanding disciplinary cases are now reported on and discussed per division. The final question posed by the Honourable Member related to the likelihood of Medupi and Kusile meeting their budgets. With these two mega projects, there are risks involved, and as the COO has indicated, depending on how these risks manifest themselves, whether it's a P50 or a P80 scenario, the final budget amount may in fact vary, but there is a very high degree of confidence that we will be able to achieve the successful completion of these projects within the amounts indicated on the slides. On the questions raised by the Honourable Swartz, yes, we are following the prescripts of contract management. We are capacitating our contract management capability by the appointment of 150 of these contract managers, and we need to step up our capability in that regard much more significantly than we have hitherto done, so that process is on the go. The member also asked if ESKOM has the expertise to address defects. I believe that under the leadership of Dr. Titus Mate, who is a world-recognized expert on these matters and has assisted us in identifying the root causes of some of the challenges that we have experienced at Medupi, we have been able to get to the root cause of the design defects that have afflicted the units at Medupi. And I think the proof of the pudding is that we have been able to operate Unit 3 at Medupi successfully. However, there is a caveat attached to that. We need to now have a trial period where we ensure that these design modifications are in fact suitable and that they can withstand the rigors of operation, and that we can then roll out these defects to the other units. And as was stated, we have already started doing so at Unit 6, which was successfully commissioned today, and that unit is now ramping up and is producing electricity. So again, the prognosis is quite positive for addressing these design defects. I think the same comments, Honourable Chair, that applied to the budgets for Medupi and Kusile apply to the completion dates for the additional feed conveyor belt. These are large and difficult and challenging projects, and there are a number of issues that can go wrong, not least of which is the global pandemic that is currently afflicting us. So we are doing our best to complete the feed conveyor at the indicated time, but of course risks manifest themselves. The Honourable Maotwe asked a question regarding companies which I introduced to ESKOM. These 4 companies, none of them received any work. They were never appointed. So there is no question that a procurement prescript was violated in the process. The introductions that were made, and that was where the matter was left. So nothing further emanated from those introductions. Then I think, Honourable Chair, I hope, oh yes, your question, Chair, related to the amounts of the recoveries. Chair, that is I guess that's the 100 billion rand question, is how much money can we recover? It's a long process. It's a tortuous process. It means that in some instances we have to go to jurisdictions outside of South Africa to recover money that was unlawfully expatriated from this country. We are working on that. We are building our legal cases, and we will be pursuing individuals that we believe owe us money, again, from a delictual civil perspective, not from a criminal perspective. We must distinguish between those two. The criminal domain is obviously not where ESKOM operates. So we are making progress in that regard, and we've got a forensic and a legal team that is seized with these matters and on a continuous basis seek to recover without prejudicing any of the claims that are currently under consideration in ESKOM. I can give the committee the assurance that we are working hard on recovering money that was unlawfully paid or transferred from ESKOM to recipients. The final question, Honourable Chair, was from the Honourable Somyo, which related to take or pay. It is a mechanism that, unfortunately, for better or for worse, has become very well accepted in capital-intensive projects, particularly where there is a single or a limited number of off-takers, and where a mining company, for example, seeks some comfort that it will be able to recoup the very large capital investment made in the project in question by being able to rely on a contractual commitment to pay, regardless of whether the customer, in this case ESKOM, for reasons that are not due to any fault of the coal mining company, does not take the product as was committed. And that's exactly what happened at Medupi. But as my colleague, Mr. Mashego, pointed out, the exact opposite came to our rescue in the case of Tegeta and Optimum, where we were able to put in a claim against that colliery because they failed to deliver. Unfortunately, because the entity is now on business rescue, we are now going to have to be satisfied with only a part of the claim that we have put in against the business practice or the business rescue practitioners. So, Chair, thank you. If I may hand back to you, please. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you very much. I've got a list of follow-up members here. Honourable Dirks, Honourable Mente, Honourable Swart. In that order, please.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Honourable Mother.
All right, sure, that's fine. Honourable Dirks.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, thank you, Chairperson, and also thank you to the board and to the Minister and to ESKOM for the answers that they've given us. I just want to, in conclusion, I just want to make this appeal once again that ESKOM and the Minister and the Department must, from time to time, brief South Africans in a very structured manner, brief them on what exactly is going on. I'm making this appeal because it is extremely difficult what is taking place currently in South Africa. And when the public out there look at ESKOM, they don't look at Mr. De Richter, myself, or the minister as differently. They paint us with the same brush. And in their eyes is that we are all corrupt. We are corrupt and we are busy stealing because they are not getting given proper information from time to time. If they only know how far an MP is removed from the administration, from tenders, they do not understand those things. They just feel that we are there in government to do wrong things, to do corruption. And I really want to appeal to the minister and to ESKOM and to the department to take South Africans into confidence and brief them from time to time, not just all over the place, but in a very structured manner to explain to them what's going on, where the problems is, how we are busy fixing these problems. Because we can't continue like this here. The situation is untenable. Our constituencies out there are just very, 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 very upset with what is going on. And we get accused of all kinds of things, wrongdoings that we are not part of. So I want to appeal to the minister and department, please take South Africans in confidence. Like, for example, a matter of Brian Mulletf, we know the 17 million rand that claim against him. Now the department is telling us it's a 3 million rand claim. We need to be briefed. South Africans need to be briefed. And I want to appeal to the minister, please brief South Africans in a structured manner what is going on in ESKOM. Thank you very much.
Honorable Mente. Honorable Mente.
Yes.
You can,
Chair.
yes, proceed.
Yes, Chair. My question in relation to the declarations was that out of the process of 100% declared management, how many did they find out that they are doing business with ESKOM? If they are they still doing business with ESKOM and being paid with the tax funds? Secondly, the businesses that were overpaid, who owns those businesses? And what will happen to the people who made payments for work not being done? Thank you very much.
All right, Honorable Swartz. Colleagues, may I remind you, if you are speaking, please turn on your camera. Thank you.
Okay, Chair. I just need to do a follow-up. The last time we were in a meeting with ESKOM, they had indicated to us that they are going to recover the funds from the service provider who had provided the designs which had defects in them. So I just want to check how far they were that process, because the indication they gave to us when we asked the question, what would happen to the service provider, that said they are going to recover the funds from those defects. And then also I had asked a question around the production of gypsum and whether Rotec is still conducting the market research or it's no longer existing, because I had asked how far is that process and when can it start generating revenue for ESKOM, or whether it's no longer a process that is in place at ESKOM. And I just want to add on questions around what Honorable Mente has asked in terms of employees declaring their interest. Why 6% of the employees have not submitted their declarations, and what actions have been taken against those employees who have not declared their interest? And on the cases, Chair, I don't know whether the presentation we got and what they presented now to us their modifications, because they had said to us that in March 2020 they had 263 cases, and as at the 31st of March 2020, 103 of these cases is being investigated in-house. 19 cases are being investigated by outsourced service provider, and 134 cases are being prepared for outsourcing. They had said 43 cases have been referred to law enforcement agencies. 39 of these cases are active, while 4 cases have been completed. What is the rand value of these cases, Chair? What are the turnaround times for the cases to be finalized, as some of these cases are carried over from many years back? It is not new cases, it is cases of many years back. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Maote.
Thank you. Chair, I'm a bit worried
Chair, can I mute everybody, then we can start afresh?
Yes, please. I would like to start. Chair, can I go ahead?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you.
Please unmute Honorable Maote. Thank you.
Thank you. I was muted by the staff. It's fine. So, Chair, I'm saying I'm a bit worried that ESKOM issued a statement on the 15th of April exonerating the COO, and only today or yesterday the minister received the report. Like, how does it work? The COO is a very high-profile executive at ESKOM, and it goes without saying that the minister should have seen the report even before ESKOM announced it. So I'm a bit worried, but I welcome the minister when he says the report will be sitting on our desks next week, Tuesday. Now, on the issue of victimization, Chair, I'm going to make available the information, but the minister must guarantee that he is going to protect these individuals. And these individuals, Minister, just for your clarity, they are not moved from anywhere else to operations. They are moved from operations to non-operational departments. And therefore, they are sent there and they are being told that you are underperforming. For example, in HR, you are moved from engineering. As an engineer, you are taken to HR, and 3 months down the line, you are told that you are non-performing, and therefore we are starting the disciplinary process. So it's cases like those, but I'm going to make the information available, and please protect these people. They are already victimized enough. These individuals worked for many, many years at ESKOM, for more than 20 years at ESKOM, and today they've been told that they're underperforming when they've been performing very well for all these years. So, and they are victimized because they refuse to take illegal instructions of being told to pay Avenge, for example, without Avenge doing any work. So please, Minister, protect these employees. These employees are coming forward to report corruption, and therefore they should be protected. I thank you, Chair.
All right, that is fine. I hope I'm audible. I rushed to fetch my earphones because my one dog, I'm told, is just making a noise. So I apologize, colleagues, for that. Don't know what has happened. On the issue of the CEO, I'm not sure if I heard your response on the issue of the 4 companies from the last time, that issue that I raised when I was speaking to my questions. And then on the issue of the 5 billion rands, and so far Optimum and Tegeta is concerned, to ascertain whether any monies had been paid by ESKOM to Optimum and Tegeta prior them going into a business rescue. If that can be responded to, and if any monies were, how much was that, and were the services actually received? Then on the final issue will be around the issue, CEO, that you raise of the long processes that you speak about in the international jurisdiction, jurisdictions, insofar the recoveries and recuperations are concerned. We welcome the fact that you're doing that, but I think the substance of the question, or the core of the question, is how much are you pursuing? How much is ESKOM wanting to recover? What are the estimates to date? If it's a moving target, that's fine. If the numbers are escalating as more things are unearthed, that's fine. But as things stand now, what is it that ESKOM is set to recover? Right? Can we get responses to those questions, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. My responses to the Honourable Dirks. We do provide a quarterly system update. I acknowledge that this does not deal with all of the business issues and issues around corruption and recoveries and so forth, but it does go into a significant amount of detail, and this is streamed live on most television stations in South Africa. So we do try and keep South Africa informed, but I acknowledge that we can do a better job at telling the ESKOM story. So that's very much part of the ESKOM to-do list. In response to Honourable Mente, I have just verified with our company secretary, none of our board members and none of our EXCO members is doing business with ESKOM. So I can confirm that the answer is zero. The ownership of the businesses that were overpaid, Honourable Chair, we would need to get back to you on that one. We would need to go to CIPC and establish what the shareholding is of the various companies. In some instances, they are subsidiaries of international companies. In some instances, subsidiaries of local companies. But unfortunately, as we sit here, I can't give you an accurate answer on that question. With regard to the people who made payments for work that wasn't done, they have been subjected to disciplinary proceedings insofar as we are able to institute those against them. Obviously, when they have resigned, then we have to follow the other route of trying to recover money from them by means of a civil claim. In terms of the questions posed by the Honourable Swartz, if I can ask Mr. Overall, sorry Jan for the promotion, to address the issue of recovering money from the designers for the defects as well as the production of gypsum.
Thank you, Andre. Chairperson, at this point in time, as I said earlier, the focus is at this point in time to make sure that the design defects are successfully implemented. And what has been implemented, that it's carefully and closely assessed to make sure that we have implemented the success. As I said earlier, in parallel, we are following the commercial process, the contractor, as well as ESKOM. So we have appointed a law firm that is assisting us with all the information and all the facts and figures that we have at our disposal. And so this is the commercial process, legal process that we are following to make sure that we get the money back that we believe we're entitled to, and that we believe it is actually design defects that is on the side of the contractor. So that's the process that we're following. In terms of the update on the production of gypsum, as I said earlier, ERI did market research and that they believe there's an appetite for the product, as I said, in construction, as well as in building-related applications, as well as in the agricultural sector. They brought their strategy to the ERI board about 10 days ago, and the board then approved the strategy that we will follow a commercial process. So what the commercial process will be at this point in time, in selling this gypsum, we don't know, but ERI has been tasked and mandated to come back to the board, the ERI board, at the end of January to give feedback, and then a decision will be made. So thank you.
All right, Minister. All right, are you CEO? Are you still proceeding?
Yes, Honourable
Okay,
Chair. With
let's do that. Okay, sure. Then the Minister will come in when you're done. No problem.
The rand value of cases in the list furnished in our written submission, Chair, we do not disclose that because that is not the major focus of the criminal prosecution. So it's not a matter of the criminal justice system wanting to assist us in the recovery of the damages that we suffered. So that is why when we report back on the civil cases, that is when we include the rand value of cases. We will endeavour to establish what those rand values are. Again, unfortunately, we don't have that information to hand. Chair, if I can then also just repeat what I said earlier, none of the businesses that I introduced to ESKOM received any work from ESKOM. No contract was concluded and no work was done by any of them. Your question regarding the payment of monies by ESKOM to Tegeta, this is part of the well-known saga where ESKOM advanced a prepayment in order to allow certain individuals to purchase the Optimum company from its former owners, and that amount, if memory serves, was north of R500 million that was advanced. So a very considerable amount of money. The total amount of money, Chair, the last question that you asked, that we seek to recover at this point in time is north of 1 billion rand, which we are pursuing through various channels. Not all of it is recoverable. Some of it has already been extinguished by prescription, and therefore we have to make haste if we want to get past the post and actually lodge these claims so that we can stop the clock ticking in terms of prescription. Thank you, Chair.
All right, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few remarks in closing. Let me firstly thank the ESKOM acting chair and board members and the executives for the thorough preparations that they made and sending you the material in time. Secondly, Honourable Dirks will try and put together all the facts as best we can, and we certainly agree with you that the public needs to know where we stand. And that will certainly help to keep some of the Twitterati quiet, because it's interesting how people who've been involved in malfeasance in ESKOM are at the forefront of some of these campaigns, but that's something we'll deal with in time. Chair, I want to say that there is, to my mind, some report lurking somewhere in ESKOM that we need to look for in the period 2018-19 probably, where the early lifestyles audits did show that there were, let's call it people in the management tiers, if not elsewhere, who were doing business with ESKOM. But if I'm wrong, I'd like to be proven wrong. But I'd like to just recover that information if I can. And if it's available, we'll let you know. In previous reports to SCOPA, it might have been presented by the previous chair of the board to yourselves. Because there's some vague recollection that I have in that matter. And as far as Honorable Mautwe is concerned, please let me have the names of the people concerned, and we'll certainly deal with that. And having studied the COO investigation report more thoroughly and taken legal advice, Chair, we will make sure that you receive what you have requested in that regard as well. And then, the Tegeta story is also an interesting story, which goes back to the Gupta era and the efforts made to undermine supply of coal and to marshal coal suppliers in a way in which certain coal mines had to be closed, for example, near the Anat mine at the time. So it's worth recalling that history at some stage. And perhaps also looking at the investigation stroke inquiry, which the Public Enterprises Committee in 2017 undertook of what went on at ESKOM, because there are many questions here that have their origins in some of the events that were disclosed during that particular period as well. But thank you for your interaction and the time that you've spent with us, and thanks to the honorable members as well.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, the Chairperson of the Board and the CEO and the executives. On a lighter note, someone says that my dog must be very hungry. No, one dog has gone missing and this one's lost their mind because of that. So that's just on a lighter but serious note. Personally, for self, I'll have to go and find it. All right, I think there is merit to the suggestion that the minister has made insofar as us interacting with the coal and accounting firms which are involved or were involved with ESKOM. So we'll have to meet with those. Colleagues, if there are any questions that you want followed up, please send those through to the staff tomorrow. 10 o'clock, and then by end of business we can send correspondence through to ESKOM. We will request a report from ESKOM on an update on the consequence management, and we of course going to interact with the law enforcement agencies on the high number of cases which are with them to gauge progress, so that we can bring all these things up to a logical and legal conclusion. We are going to, the SIU in particular is in our purview, in the SAPS and the Hawks. I think ESKOM, please send us through the schedule of those cases and their case numbers for the ease of reference and ease of tracking for us, so that when we interact with the law enforcement agencies, we can speak to particular cases with a level of being specific. Yes, on the issues of the report to SCOA, as I indicated, when you send that through, you will CC us so that we do not duplicate process, and that remains a SCOA process. Of course, we were wanting to clarify it since you were here. There will be further correspondence from us, and we will do a follow-up, a check rather, Sis Dombian Butben on the the lifestyle audits that the minister refers to of 2018-2019 to check whether that is in any of the records. If not, ESKOM will please supply us with that as well. Colleagues, I think that there is progress in certain areas, and therefore it's clear that there was merit in us going to Medupi and Kusile as part of exerting the necessary pressure, oversight, and holding the institution accountable, because this series of meetings with ESKOM arise out of us going to Medupi and Kusile, and the recommendations which the House adopted unanimously have formed the basis of all our interactions. And I think that we have set a good benchmark insofar as our own processes are concerned. And I think we must be able to take the credit for setting into motion what is pointed oversight, as opposed to us dealing with things generically, and the reporting, of course, is consistent with the recommendations that we made. And I think we will have to adopt a similar modus operandi of oversight with all the other entities. And this, of course, speaks to us whittling down in terms of our own focus areas moving forward, so that we don't end up discussing everything that is out there, but without making the necessary headway. So I think that to ESKOM, we welcome the progress that you are making in the areas which we had raised with you there. Then the issue of the reporting so far as the COO is concerned, I will request that we receive that letter tomorrow. Because I just think it's one set of correspondence outside what will be forwarded to you, so that we can set into motion our own processes of consulting parliamentary legal services here as well, so that by next week this matter is wholly classified. So I'll request the chairperson, Prof and CO, that we receive that correspondence tomorrow insofar as those matters. Colleagues, if I may just make one announcement. Tomorrow we are meeting at 12 o'clock with the SIU, and I would imagine all of us have received the SIU presentation, and they will be briefing us for the meeting tomorrow. So we're meeting at 12 tomorrow with the SIU. So it is a packed program. In the absence of any other matter, I would like to thank all of you, my colleagues, and to our staff. And I must indicate, colleagues, that you may have noticed that Ms. Shabalala is not with us, our researcher. She has had a bereavement in the family, and therefore she will be on leave. And so on behalf of the committee, we also extend our condolences to her, a very key and integral member of our support staff in that regard. Minister, Deputy Minister, and to the ESKOM family, thank you very much. And to all the institutions of state that were here, thank you very much for joining us. Have a good evening. Be safe, be warm. And to ESKOM, please communicate with the citizenry out there where there are power outages, because Mamelodi, for example, as I was saying earlier on, yesterday and today, the protests that are going on there are centered around access to electricity and so on. So please do take the time to actually look into that matter and interact and engage with that community. Colleagues, thank you very much. In the absence of anything else, have a good evening. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Good night.